Zafar Sobhan, the editor of Dhaka Tribune. I'm here with Asiful Islam, planning editor of Dhaka Tribune, and we're here to discuss the recently concluded last US presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in Las Vegas, USA. So Asif, you've just returned back from a month in the States. Tell me, what did you learn there and how did the debates jive with what you've learned and expected?
Well, first let me just say the debates were entertaining. It wasn't as much of a cage fight as some of us were worried that it would be. But I think for both candidates it was kind of a failure, and let me explain quickly why.
Okay.
What I took back from my trip to the States was that the big issue in America was to win over the millennial vote. Millennials are a young group of people. They're people who were born between 1979 and 1997.
Sure.
So young voters, and there was a quiet demographic shift in the United States recently. 31% of eligible voters are now millennials. So this generation counts. They feel like they're outside of the system, and they want a candidate who's speaking to them. Bernie Sanders was that candidate, but
Right.
he didn't make it past the Democratic primaries, and neither of these two candidates are doing particularly well reaching out and addressing some of their issues. So I'm not sure that this debate is going to change much. I think both candidates spoke to their party bases and gave them what they expected.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I mean, there are two ways of looking at this debate or any debate. One is who did better on the merits, and I think we can perhaps both agree, maybe you disagree, that I think Hillary took it.
Oh,
on
she
the
took
merits.
definitely.
But the question is, has that impacted voters? Is that going to change the undecided voters' mind? And perhaps it hasn't done that.
Well, so I felt as though Hillary she did a good job of coming across as conciliatory, somebody speaking from the middle, reaching out to all Americans. I was very impressed that she was able to do that. She came across as quite a pleasant person.
Yeah, and for her, again, this is the thing. You have to understand, what is it at stake in these debates? You see, it's not just a question of her winning the debate by being more versed on the issues than Trump. I think people expect that. Actually, the knock on Hillary is she's not likable. She's not pleasant. So she needs to come across as pleasant. To her, that's the challenge. I think she did that.
I think she did too. I think, so two things people are saying about Hillary, two negative things. One is that she's not that likable. I thought she was pretty likable this debate.
Yeah.
And the other is that she's not trustworthy.
Yeah.
But this time around, I thought it was brilliant that she laid it out. In the 70s, this is what Trump was doing, this is what I was doing in the 80s. She did it by decade. And she came across as saying, well, listen, I mean, I've had a long career. Maybe some of my decisions, are things you can take offense with or you can take exception to. But overall, I've been trying to do this job as best as I can.
I mean, I think, like I said, I have a minority view on the second debate, which most pundits think was a disaster for Trump. I actually think he did pretty well, because my feeling is that when Trump brings the crazy, it actually helps him. There was a lot of mudslinging, and I just think that is not playing to Hillary's strengths or her advantage. Her advantage is the issues. Her advantage is when she keeps the debate talking about, what are you going to do when you're president? Because at that stage, she has really very detailed plans. She can, she's very methodical, and she says, well, I'm going to do this, and this. Whereas Trump is like, I have the best plan.
Yes.
Okay? We're going to win so much, you're going to be tired of winning.
We're going to win bigly, as he likes to say.
We're going to win bigly. And, the first time he does it okay. But he said, if you do it 3 debates in a row, at some point, people are going to be like, okay, I've heard this before, but what exactly are you going to do? It just sounds like bluster.
I totally agree. Actually, there was one brilliant move in the second debate. I don't even know if Trump was aware of it. But he'd just come out of that weekend where he'd made those vile comments about groping women and how the sense of entitlement, and it was a terrible mess. And senior members of the Republican Party were saying, well, maybe it's time to ditch this candidate and do something about him. And at the debate, they're discussing this, and he's clearly in a difficult situation about this. And then suddenly, when asked about foreign policy, he disagrees with his own vice presidential candidate.
Right. He says we haven't talked about that.
And completely changes the news cycle.
Yeah.
And so from that moment on, all this discussion from the weekend about what the terrible things he'd said suddenly becomes Trump is having a beef with his vice president.
And something, but here's the thing, I don't think he planned it. And I think what's really interesting about this debate is it's clear that Trump doesn't plan anything. He has no discipline. He has no ability to think, as you said, okay, who do I need to reach out to? I need to reach out to millennials. I need to reach out to this group. I need to score on this issue. He has very little method to how he acts, and which is why he's so easy to bait.
Right.
And and he's really showing a lack of a very basic level of discipline, which you would kind of expect to see in a president, let alone a presidential candidate.
So Trump is in a between a rock and a hard place, because when he does best when he's just sort of freewheeling through the debate, saying whatever he wants, offending whoever he wants.
Sure.
On the other hand,
that's true. When he tries to be too scripted, that doesn't work for him either.
It simply doesn't work.
Did you catch this thing where he kind of seemed to concede the election to Hillary, where he said, "Good luck, Hillary"? It was in answer to a question about foreign policy.
Right.
And he said, well, what you're going to see is going to be a disaster over the next 4 years. Good luck with that, Hillary.
Yeah, no.
I think that, again, like I said, it wasn't calculated. He doesn't calculate these things.
No,
he just says what he thinks. But I think at some level, maybe,
well, this is
he
the
figures
thing.
He's going to lose.
I don't know, and I think the minute Trump starts to saying something is rigged, is the minute you think he's going to lose this fight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he's already sort of covering his tail, if you excuse the expression.
Sure.
And I think that there is a sense, and he didn't come across as the usual sort of, the bravado is gone.
Yeah, there's this great exchange where she said, look, this is just what he does. Every time he loses, he said, he even said the Emmys were rigged. And then as she said that, he's like, I should have won. He couldn't help himself. It's brilliant. I love his little one-liners. He said, I'll try and explain what Donald said to you. You can't.
You can't, exactly.
He just has no discipline. He's a lot of fun to watch.
He's totally entertaining to watch. And things were, I have to give him the credit of saying he was really, he was much more, the self-composure was much better than usual. He was much more calm.
Yeah.
And although that's less entertaining, this is something that his campaign has told him this is something he needs to do. But then that final comment at the end, that nasty woman comment.
Yeah.
Seriously, he should have bit his tongue.
And he can't help himself. That's the thing. It's clear that he can't help himself. And the interesting thing about Trump, if I understand, actually, I don't know if you saw this recently. Ann Coulter was on Bill Maher. Okay, and it was a 10-minute back and forth, and he's of course very pro-Clinton in this election, not in general, but in relation to Trump. And she gave essentially the best argument for Trump's candidacy that I've heard, better than him, better than anyone. She is a very persuasive. She's a very persuasive debater, and she said that it's all about the issue. She said she doesn't care if he's a pig, she doesn't care if he's a this or a that. She just cares about the issues. That's really what matters. And what is he going to do about immigration? And that's an important issue to her and many Americans. I think for me, the big mystery for all of us is, why would anyone vote for this guy? And I think there are a couple of things, I really think when you talk to people who are going to vote for him, a lot of it is people are just sick of the establishment, they're sick of the media, they're sick of the way everything has been going, and they think that you need to really shake up the system. That was actually a lot of what animated Bernie Sanders voters.
That's right.
It animates millennials. I think the mistake they're making with Trump is if they figure that Trump is any kind of guy to shake up the system or to do anything for anyone other than himself or the top 1% of income earners in the US. But the anger, the desire to come up with something new and to completely flip the tables is, I think, what is animating his candidacy. And if you look at something like immigration, for instance, there's Ann Coulter, she just said, when Bill Maher baited her and said, well, you think, we should keep all immigrations out, all Muslims out of this country. She's like, I think we should cut immigration down to zero. I think no one should be allowed to enter this country.
Yeah.
And, but the thing is, that's a point of view.
Sure.
And, I can understand people thinking that. That wouldn't be my point of view, but, people say, hey, let's solve all of our problems here first, then, we can open the borders in 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Ann Coulter is a bit, on the extreme side of extreme, but I do agree that she can be persuasive, and she's definitely very, very, very well read, well educated. But here's the thing. The 2008 subprime mortgage crisis, that changed everything. Middle-class people who had saved and followed the rules lost their houses.
Yeah.
And then the government was compelled, really, to bail out the banks, but they couldn't really bail out every person who defaulted on a mortgage.
Sure.
And so, for the first time, I think maybe in the United States' history, the American dream was really in danger. the middle class. I mean,
sure. I mean, they're saying that
home ownership is the foundation.
Yeah, and they're
dream.
saying that this is the first generation of Americans in perhaps a century who are going to be less wealthy than their parents.
That's right.
You
That's
see?
right.
And so this is new. This is different.
It is very different. It's
You know?
and they call, in fact, millennials the gig generation. These are people who will not have a traditional sort of job, where they go up the ranks and they retire.
What generation is
the
that?
gig generation.
Gig generation.
Because
right.
they're doing 3 or 4 jobs to sort of
Sure.
make ends meet.
Yeah.
So they're all part-timers, or they're working from home, or they're self-employed and entrepreneurs, or whatever. They're doing what they can to get by.
So is it really? I mean, here's the thing. I mean, it's been a long time since I've lived in America. It's been several years since I've even traveled there. How bad is it? I mean, you were just there for a month. Is it really that bad? I mean, my understanding is that unemployment is now down. But is it all, their jobs and their jobs, right? I mean, how bad is it? Are people really hurting? Is it really that difficult for millennials, or are they just, our generation is, millennials, we had it just as bad, they're just whining, but is it really that bad?
I think it may be. The places I went happened to be fairly affluent places. I was in Denver, Colorado, I was in Arlington, Virginia,
Sure.
I was in New York City. I felt as though, it's true, the debt burden is much higher than anything we've seen. Education has just become very expensive. And lifestyles have changed. I mean, in the 90s, you could imagine, renting out a little place. Let me tell you, the median, I'm talking about Manhattan here.
Sure, all right.
The median rent for a 1-bedroom flat in Manhattan is $3,400 a month.
Okay, that's expensive.
10 years ago, it was about $2,200.
When I lived in Manhattan, I lived in a tiny shoebox, but I was paying $1,300, which I thought was a lot of money. But $1,300
you couldn't find anything with $1,300.
Yeah, you can find a rat hole for $1,300.
You couldn't find a parking space probably in Manhattan
for $1,300 a month. Yeah.
So it has become pretty expensive. There's this massive debt burden, and there's this idea that even if I do everything right, I may not get a job that will give me security. So if you're really lucky and you land a great job, let's say a bank or one of these new tech firms.
But you see, this is the thing. I honestly think, and I think that if any of the two candidates, either of the two candidates is going to be addressing this issue, it is Hillary, and she's laid out how she's going to do it.
Yeah.
I think, and she's raised the issue that the only thing Donald has said he's going to do is he said he's going to slash taxes for people at the top, and somehow that's going to trickle down.
It's trickle down on steroids, as Hillary said.
Better than trumped up trickle down. I mean, her zinger game is much improved, which it needed to, so that's good.
So, no, I think that the Trump plan, I don't think he has much of a plan. I also haven't really understood what his foreign policy really is going to be.
Yeah.
He's got one idea, which is let's build a wall, which is not much of an idea. And maybe there'll be
when you think about it, and you build a wall, why not, right? It's a public works project, so presumably there's going to be it'll create a lot of jobs building the wall. Then here's the thing, just having a wall isn't that useful. I did a little calculation. I think is it 4,000 miles?
I believe so.
Something like that, right? And so if you have 100 people per mile, right?
Yeah.
That's 400,000 people.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And, who need to man the wall. And if they're working in 3 shifts, that's 1.5 million jobs. It can actually solve, and these would be jobs for low-income people. These would be jobs for people who, don't have much education. And the fact is, this is what FDR did. This is what Lyndon Johnson did. The New Deal and the Great Society, you create government jobs. It's a tried and tested method of employing people when times are bad. So, you might as well employ them standing on a damn wall. They've done more useless things in government jobs in the past, right?
I'm concerned that you may have thought this one out more closely than he has.
Probably, yeah.
You do have a point there. That's big public works projects. I would have preferred highway upgrades and port upgrades to a wall.
The one thing which I think was in the first debate, maybe in the second debate, which Trump said, which was totally correct, was he said that America's airports are a disgrace compared to airports in Asia.
He called them third world airports.
And that's absolutely true.
Yeah, they are. I just flew in from JFK. And JFK and our airport here is about the same.
Yeah. I know. What is that, right? You go to Changi, you go to Dubai. Those are airports, my friend.
Right. This is true.
So that I'll give him.
Yeah, but of course, the press has been unfair. Trump should be called out on everything bad he's saying, but there are points that he's trying to make, however ineloquently.
Yeah. No, and also I do think what is frustrating for people who vote for him, who support him, is it is so clear that the media is in the tank for Hillary. That has to be frustrating.
No, exactly.
When you see how they are kind of piling on to everything he does. And I think it lends this sense of that the game is rigged and is rigged against us. And when you pile on him, it makes you think the game is rigged against Donald Trump. Though of course, no one is more entitled and has the game less rigged against them than Donald Trump. But somehow he is able to wear that mantle because he's getting beat up on by the press. And I got to tell you, I mean, as you mentioned, his comments, which everyone talked about, right? And vile and reprehensible, sure, but the truth is they don't even crack the top 10 of offensive stuff he has said during this campaign, let alone stuff which he said 10 years ago, which was supposedly in a private conversation.
That's right.
I just don't know that should have been taken over the news cycle the way it did.
Yeah, well, there is one. First of all, I just want to say, look at that. Donald Trump may be a better salesman than we've given him credit for. We're using the word rigged.
Yeah.
In his favor.
Right. Well, the economy. I mean, the thing is he's talking about the election being rigged, but people saying the economy has been rigged. That's an old argument, and I'm pretty sure Bernie used to use that word.
Sure. But there is one thing he said today, and that was about whether he'd accept the outcome.
That's everyone's saying. Brett Stevens of the Wall Street Journal, he tweeted that it is the most disgraceful thing any candidate for president has said in the last 160 years.
It is unprecedented. I don't think anybody... And the moderator was even trying to explain that, well, it's kind of a bedrock of the American democratic system that we have peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah.
And he still, he was given the opportunity to say, well, unless something big happens, sure, I'll recognize.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
Yeah.
And I think that also probably went badly for him. I mean, his base wants him to be defiant. His base wants him to be in your face.
Yeah.
His base is tired of what they call political correctness, what other people call just civility.
Civil courtesy.
But I don't think that this last debate wasn't really about the base. The base is there. He doesn't really need to talk to these people. Those guys are already sold on his brand.
The thing is this. I mean, I don't know. There could be a silent vote for Trump, like people who are embarrassed to tell that they're going to vote for him, but they're going to vote for him. Well, you never know; it's possible. It appears that the polls are breaking away from him. Then again, there's a month left? Almost a month, about 3 weeks.
19 days?
Yeah, 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks then left, right? November 8th, right? And so, things can happen. I mean, even between now and then, things can happen. But what is interesting to me is and I mean, dare one hope, dare one dream, if this actually puts the Senate and the House in play, that's a tectonic shift in American politics. I actually really think that this presages the crack-up of the Republican Party. I mean, I think Trump's candidacy has shown the bankruptcy of the Republican Party, because the interesting thing is the Republican Party always had plausible deniability. I mean, a lot of people, myself included, were always saying, party is all about, racism, sexism, homophobia, appealing to the lowest common denominator, xenophobia, that's all they have. And they would say, no, it's not about that. It's about limited government. It's about, respect for, the Second Amendment.
Sure.
It's about, free trade. It's about this. It's about that. And the thing is, it's clear, for instance, now he's no longer, the Republican Party apparently is no longer a party in favor of free trade.
Right.
And so they've just kind of taken that as a thwack. It's just been, knocked out of the park, just like that. So, and it hasn't changed people's vote.
No.
Okay, so what does that tell you about the core values of this party, where something which was supposedly a bedrock of what they believed has just been completely turned upside down, and it hasn't changed anyone's vote? It obviously means that it wasn't a core bedrock principle of theirs. And what have you got left? What are the bedrock principles which Trump espouses? Essentially, anti-immigration, and for want of a better word, white supremacism.
Well, I don't know if it's...
What's left?
Well, I don't know if Bobby Jindal would agree with you, but here's the thing. I mean, I think with the Republican Party...
But what would the argument be?
The argument, I think, would be this. They're the party of conservative... I mean, they're really conservative in the sense that they don't want to move too far away from what their definition, or the way they define the founding principles of the American Republic. And so they're conservative, they want states' rights, they want the Constitution to be interpreted in a particular way. But I think
Donald Trump is so, in that sense, unconservative. Okay, he's got a foul mouth, he isn't. Yeah,
so he isn't somebody you'd bring to one of these,
he doesn't strike me as particularly religious. He doesn't strike me as a pious man.
No,
he doesn't strike me as a modest man, a good man. And I think part of that whole idea of conservatism and what is it? It was moral superiority. Look,
Right.
But I think he's an extremely poor ambassador for that point of view.
That's why they had to bring Pence on.
Sure.
To reach out to the evangelicals and to the conservative base and say, we're going to balance this out.
Yeah.
They were kind of stuck with him. They didn't know where the support came from. But the support really came from what you could call the forgotten man. So you've got the wealthy, you have the political elites, and you have the working class, and they're covered by the Democratic.
Yeah, but who's the forgotten man?
The forgotten man is again the average Joe who's.
But here's the thing: what I've read is
taxes.
Right. Well, unlike Donald Trump.
Unlike Donald Trump.
No, and what I've read though, the thing is this: is a lot of people are saying, well, look, you go to Appalachia, you go to all of these factory towns in the Midwest where people have been left behind. Stuff like NAFTA has really hurt these communities, and the jobs went in the coal mines, the steel mills, all of that stuff. And those are the guys voting for Trump. Those aren't the guys voting for Trump. Actually, if you look, the median income for Trump voters is $72,000. Okay, that's if you pass that's on 538 Nate Silver's website. It's actually it's a myth that this is the herding white working class vote.
No, it isn't the working class. The white working, in fact, and that's why I think that both Pennsylvania and Ohio are leaning Democrat. It's not actually the white working class.
Now we're getting something.
Who is it? It's the white middle. It's these people who are at risk or did in fact lose their houses after 2008.
Okay,
it's the white
the aspirational middle class.
That's right, and these are the people who
that would explain it. Yeah,
they've been playing by the book. They've been paying their taxes. They don't have a great savings rate. Their debt exposure is dangerous. I mean, it's critically un-American.
And they believe in law and order. They believe in their police force. They don't like Black Lives Matter.
They may or may not, but it's not very high on their list of priorities. I mean, they're not terrible people. They're not this basket of deplorables. That was a big mistake for Hillary Clinton to say that. I think, but they feel that they've just been forgotten.
Okay.
The system is concerned about minorities and
but you don't think
entrants.
that? Here's the thing. And maybe she's not done a good job of communicating this. But you don't think Hillary Clinton's policies, or even for that matter, Barack Obama's policies, have been addressing their concerns and their issues. I mean, it was George W. Bush who got us into the damn recession, and it was Barack Obama who got us out.
Yeah. It's difficult to understand how people are reading that. I mean, it's absolutely true that the Republican Party put us in a mess in the first place.
Yeah.
And Obama had, again, rock and a hard place. I mean, what do you do? How do you deal with this? And he successfully steered the economy out of what could have been a much bigger disaster.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get credit for that. And of course, I think there's probably some element of latent racism. There are some. I mean.
Yeah. I mean, let's call it what it is,
okay. Right? But I still don't think that that's really at the core of it. I think what's really at the core of it is this sense that after the economic crisis, nobody stood up for them, for this sort of middle class, and there was no place to go. They had to move back in with their parents or whatever. Yeah. And so the political establishment had failed them. Yeah. Nobody ever came out and said sorry.
Yeah. My sense is it's interesting, right? One of the things in their closing statement, I think Trump made a very interesting statement where he said, if you want another 4 years of Barack Obama, vote for her. And I think actually Hillary Clinton will take that. She wants to fight this election on Barack Obama's record. She's not distancing herself from him the way Gore distanced himself from Clinton back in 2000 and then lost the election. I mean, very closely, or you would say he won. But I think getting back to then, now let's sort of tie it in with your whole point about millennials, right? Sure. So if no one is really speaking to them, but my sense is a tie goes to Hillary in that, I think the person who spoke to them the most, who inspired them the most, was clearly Bernie Sanders. Yeah. People needed to win over those votes, right? Yeah. And it's possible that Hillary has not succeeded. It's also, but I find it hard to believe that after these 3 debates that Trump will have won too many of them over into his thing. So then, maybe they'll stay home. Maybe they'll vote for an alternative candidate. Yes. I think he needed to win them. I don't think he's won. I think a tie breaks in Hillary's favor.
Neither won over, I think, the millennials. Hillary did, she did mention the education issue, and that was important. But that's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
but again,
they
like I
both
said,
spoke
I
to their
mean,
bases.
the thing is this, honestly, if you're the kind of person who Bernie Sanders appeals to, okay,
Yeah.
you're disappointed that Bernie isn't running. But if Bernie Sanders was your template of the great candidate, and your choice is between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, it's pretty clear that out of the two, the one who is closer to your beliefs is Hillary Clinton, which is of course what Bernie Sanders himself has said extremely eloquently, and he's come out and he's been a great supporter and a great motivator of voters for Hillary Clinton.
That's right, and I think the objective is to try to get his supporters and bring them into Hillary's camp. I don't know that that's going to work, but let's put it like this: among millennials, I think the number was about 41%. Do identify as Democrats.
Yeah.
And a much smaller percent identify as Republicans.
Exactly. I just can't see, from what I know of millennials, which is not a great deal, but what I've read and what have you, is I just can't see that the Republican Party, as it is configured, and certainly not the Republican Party as it exists under Donald Trump, really appealing to what's important to them.
I agree, and most of the issues that they're concerned about, it would sort of break in favor of Hillary, except for those who really, really, really buy into this Republican line about smaller government.
Okay.
If they
but my understanding is that they don't buy into that, because the thing is this: is that basically the damage wrought by the recession.
Right.
And what do you need when there's a recession? You need the government to step in and give you a helping hand.
Yeah.
That is completely destroyed anyone's belief or support for smaller government. You want the government to help you in times like this. In good economic times, then a right-wing smaller government message plays. In poor economic times,
sure,
that's when it was in the aftermath of the Great Depression,
sure,
that Roosevelt was elected.
That's
and
right.
that the
That's
New Deal was enacted. This is not a good time for those kind of ideas.
It isn't, and I agree that in the end it will probably go in favor of the Democrats.
Yeah.
But I did meet people in Colorado, young, educated millennials, who were wondering, well, I mean, we've seen big government for a while and it isn't working. Obamacare has been kind of a disappointment.
Yeah, well, I guess that is the argument. The argument is, well, we've done it this way and it didn't work.
Why not try
so
something
why not
different?
try something new? I mean, I guess,
And millennials like to think of themselves as, sort of mavericks who will do things that
differently.
are differently.
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, why not? I've got these social principles, but I can put them on hold, see if this happens. And, as a group, they tend to be socially liberal but fiscally conservative.
Sure.
Which is an unusual mix.
Yeah.
No,
and
there
it is interesting.
that possibility.
And it is interesting because, again, if you talk about certain issues, like let's say immigration,
sure,
right? Those could be issues where one could break with convention on. It's like, you are socially liberal on that, but you could still say, listen, I think immigration needs to be shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, and here's the thing, the truth of the matter is, it's not a particularly radical point of view. Look at India, okay?
Sure.
Look at the Brexit vote. In the UK, it was all about immigration.
It was all about immigration.
It was all about not just illegal immigration, it was trying to shut down legal immigration. It's people saying, we don't like outsiders coming into our country.
Right.
And now that could be something which, I personally disagree with. I think it sounds uncharitable and ungenerous, but it's not. It's certainly something I can understand.
To their credit, in the 3 states I visited, I didn't meet a single person who openly said that they favored a moratorium on Muslim immigration, or that they favored a ban or a decrease in immigration. In fact, most people said that's un-American. So to their credit, I mean, the people I spoke to, now that's just the thing. How many people who actually harbor those views will come out and say it? I mean, the fact that somebody can describe that as un-American means that somebody who's thinking, well, maybe it's time to reconsider, would maybe not come forward and say that publicly.
And I think ultimately what I'm seeing here, what I'm seeing here, and I think we can end on this note, is this election is, to my mind, it's no longer really an election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. It's no longer really an election between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. It's essentially a referendum, on America.
That's right.
It's a referendum on democracy. I mean, I think everything is up for grabs. Everything is up at stake here in really the way America votes on November 8th is going to tell us everything about what America is as a country and where it's going to go from here on out. Thank you for watching. This is Zafar Sobhan and Asiful Islam from the Dhaka Tribune on Facebook Live. Thank you.
Thank you.